All right, so we need to count some coins. And we know how much money there is. We have 44 cents to work with. And we have quarters, nickels, dimes, and pennies. So we'll start with that. So we have 44 cents. And we have at least one of each. And we have quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. Let's see if I'm missing anything else. How many ways can this happen? So we have to try to find a way to keep track of all of the possibilities. And so we have to find a strategy to help us keep track. And the strategy that seemed obvious to me at the time was just thinking about when I worked at a store and I had to count back change to somebody and how I would go about doing that for 44 cents. And then what if I run out of any of them? How else can I do it? So the usual strategy for counting back change, so that's going to be my strategy to start with. And the strategy of counting back change that I was taught was to use as few coins as possible, starting with the bigger coins. So thinking about my strategy, I had to have some kind of frame of reference to do it. Otherwise, it's kind of trial and error at first, which is fine too, as long as we eventually come up with a way to not miss anything. So let's see, I want to come up with 44 cents. So I'm going to make a table, and I want to keep track of the quarters, the dimes, the nickels, and the pennies. And so the ideal way to do it would be to say, all right, well, I have 1 quarter for sure, but 2 quarters would be too many. So I have 25 cents. And then I start adding dimes. So 1 dime is going to give me 35. And a lot of times I'm going to have scratch paper too, right? So my work at first is going to be messy. So my first one is 25. And then I add a dime, that's 35. And I try to add another dime, that would be 45. That's too much, right? So I say, oh, I can't do that. So I have 5 cents. And then that gives me what? 40, and then 4 pennies. So there's my 44 cents. So I have 1 quarter, 1 dime, 1 nickel, and 4 pennies. So that's ideally how I would like to do it. Then from here, I say, okay, can I trade anything in? So what if I ran out of quarters, right? I'm at the shop, there's no quarters, so I'm going to have to trade some in. So the 25 cents I would have to break out to be another dime, and another nickel if I didn't have that right there. So another option would be no quarters, 1, 2, 3 dimes, 2 nickels, and still 4 pennies. And let's just double check. That's 30, 44 cents. So that is a possibility, but right, this says at least one of each. So that's not an option for the at least one of each. So I can't afford to be out of quarters. So although that can happen in reality, it can't happen for this particular answer. So I'm just going to cross it down after I write it out. So what does that mean? It means I'm stuck with that 1 quarter. Can I afford to cash in a dime if I didn't have any dimes? The answer is no. If I had 0 dimes, right, then I don't have at least one of each there. So I can't do that either. I can't afford to have no nickels, and there's nothing to do but have 4 pennies. So it looks like this is the only possibility. And my reasoning that it's the only possibility is one, it's the best possible given my initial strategy. And then I can't give up a quarter, a dime, or a nickel because I have to have at least one. So really, since I must have at least one. Right, that's not an option. That's not an option. We couldn't afford to trade into nickel. So there's only one way. For any given amount of money, is it always going to be only one way? The answer is no. Lots of different things can happen. So I'm just going to do a slight variation on this problem. We'll try a couple of them just to try and get used to it. So I'm going to stick with the same amount of money, but I'm going to ditch the at least part. So what if we had 44 cents and there are some quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies, but there could be none of any. So let's try and figure out what are the possibilities if those were the circumstances. So like before, I'm going to make myself a table to keep track of stuff. And then off to the side, I'm going to do some arithmetic to try and keep track of it. So we're going to have to keep track of quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. And we already ran through the ideal situation is we have 1 quarter for 25, a dime for 35, a nickel for 40, and then 4 pennies. And again, sometimes it's nice to write that out. 25, 10, 5, and 4. So it could be I have no quarters. So if I happen to have no quarters, then that means I have to make up that 25 cents with dimes and nickels. So if I scratch that, I'm going to have to make that into 2 more dimes and a nickel. And we had written that one down earlier. So that means I could have 3 dimes total and then 2 nickels and 4 pennies. So either I can have 1 quarter or no quarters. There's not much more I can do there. So then over here, I'm going to jump around and play with the dimes. So what if I ran out of dimes? Okay, so maybe I didn't have 3 of them. Maybe I only had 2 dimes to work with. So I still have no quarters. So I'm just going to kind of work my way across the table and down, trying to list out all the possibilities. So if we didn't have one of these here, then that means I would have to trade it in, right, for a couple of nickels. So that should give me 3 there and 4 there. And let's just double check whether I wrote that right. Let's see, I didn't write that. 1 dime is 2, so that should have been a 4. So that gives me 20, 30, 40, sorry, 20, 25, 30, 35, 44 cents. Okay, so I'm still on track here. And I'm kind of doing my trades over here. So let's see, what else could we do? We could break down, I don't like the order I'm doing this. I think I'm missing stuff. 3, 2, I could do 1 here. Then I'd have to trade 2 more over here, so that would be a 6. So that would be 30 cents, 40 cents plus 4. So we got to come up with some kind of system to keep track of everything. And it could be we have no dimes. Oop, I should keep track of that over here. Let's see, we got rid of another one of these. So we have another 5, another 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Oh, oh, plus the 10, 44. Yeah, we're good. If we had none, then we have to trade for a couple more there. That jumps us up to 8 and 4. So quarters, we had 1, we went to none. Dimes, we bumped them up and then started going down. Now, what I'm looking at in between in here is, are there other options where I could have kept 3 dimes and continued to make change this way? And the answer is, yeah, I guess I could have gotten rid of some nickels. All right, so I'm going to have to keep track of that. And similar here, I could have kept 2 dimes and continued on, kept 1 dime and continued on. Here, stuck with 0, so the 8. So I'm just making a note that I think I need to come back to these to investigate. I'm going to move on to the nickels here. So we're stuck with 0, 0. And really, as far as the nickels go, what's going to happen at the end here is 8's going to jump down to 7, 7 is going to jump down to 6, and so on. And every time I lose a nickel, this is going to jump by 5. So that should jump up to 9 and then 14. So I just want to double check that that's true, if that pattern makes sense. So 6 nickels is 30 cents plus 14 is still 44, right? So we're still on the right track there. So I'm going to continue this pattern down. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, I'm running out of room there. 0. And then counting down this way is going to be, and keep me straight here, if I make a mistake, let me know. 19, I'm going to keep adding 5, 24, 29, 34, 39, 44. And that's with zeros holding over here. And again, what's the point? We're trying to find a strategy where we make sure we don't miss anything. And so far, I put these notes to myself that I think I missed some stuff up there. This part right here, I think we found all of the ways to have no quarters, no dimes, and then we're just stuck with nickels and pennies. So that's kind of the easier part there. So this looks good at the moment. So I'm just going to branch out each of these other options here. So I'm going to make another table off to the side, starting with the next step from here. So my point here is I'm just going to leave the 3 there and see what happens with just the nickels and the pennies. So from that step, quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, and so we're holding 0 and 3, and then we're going to mess with the nickels. So the nickels, the next one would be 1, and I'd have to bump up the pennies 5 to 9 pennies. Does that work out right? So that gives me 30 cents, 35, and 9 is 44. And again, I'm here where I'm holding that 3, so 0, 3. The best I can do is jump down to 0 nickels. That's going to bump that up to 14. 30 and 14 is 44. All right, so I got that one. And there's really nothing else I can do holding the 3 dimes there. So I'm going to move on to this one, holding on to 2 dimes and seeing what happens. So 0, 2, and then I'm going to drop that 4 to a 3, which bumps this 4 up to a 9. Is that right? 20 and 15 is 35, and 9 is 44. And then we're holding that 2 dimes there. So what else can we do but drop the nickels? 2, 1, 0, and then we're out of choices. And that's just going to increase by 5 each time. And did I do that right? 20 and 24 is 44. 20, 25, 35, and 9 is 44. All right, so I've got this one done, got that one done, and then we'll move on to the holding on to one dime. 0, 1. Now I already have a 6 here, so I'm gonna have to drop that to a 5. That's gonna bump that up to a 9. And remember, we're holding on to that one dime and seeing what happens. So the only choice is to let the nickels drop. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Holding on to that one dime and no quarter. And these have to rise by 5. And it looks like we've got a pretty clear pattern here, but we should always, keep writing to make sure. Don't take it for granted. So just double checking some of these. That's 10 cents here. Plus 34 is 44. 10, 15, and 29 is 44. Yeah, the last two look good. I think the ones in between are going to be good too. All right, so let's see. Have we exhausted all possibilities? So we have the ideal case first. And once we dropped quarters, we started dropping dimes. And then we realized the nickels can drop. And then backtracking, we missed a couple of cases there. And the only other way to check this is kind of try and do it in reverse order, where we start with 44 pennies and then see how many ways we can trade in the 44 pennies to get back at 1 quarter, 1 dime, and 1 nickel and 4 pennies. So let's see, how many ways did we find here? I'll break these into groups. So this was kind of a special group there. That was kind of a special group there. So we have 1 way here. We have 3 ways there. 8 through 0 would be 9 ways down here. And then over here, we have 2, 4, 6 different ways things can happen. Plus 2, plus 4, plus 6. So I think those are all the ways we have here, right? 1, 3, 9, 2, 4, 6. What does that add up to? These two give me a 10. There's another 10 right there. So that's 25 different ways that we can make change for 44 cents with quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. Am I absolutely sure that's the truth? I'm mostly sure that's the truth. The only way I would be absolutely sure is if I found a different way to do it, and I found exactly 25 ways too. And the only other different way I can think of to do this, so if I want to find a different approach, I'm sure somebody else can come up with a different approach, but if I started instead with no quarters, no dimes, no nickels, but 44 pennies, and then I slowly start trading up to get to this best case scenario there. So if I could systematically do that, that should double check it. So ideally, when we solve a problem, we want to see if we can come up with a system where we don't lose track of anything, check ourselves along the way. And the best way to recheck, if possible, is to find another way to do it that gives the same answer. And that's the only other different way I can think of. Start there, work our way up to 1, 1, 1, and 4, and see if we find 25 ways to do it that way too. But I'm pretty sure looking at this, I didn't double count anything. You guys agree with that? So there's at least 25 ways to do it, is what I'm pretty sure of. Not less than that. Is there possible I missed a way? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, that's a tough problem. It's slightly easier, right? Because there's less options when we say there has to be at least one of each. The problem there is, how sure am I of this last statement right there? I'm pretty sure, because when I tried to make change, I got these zeros, and up here they said, no, 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 you got to have at least one of each. And the more I write down, the more I can look back at it and decide if I'm full of it or if I'm on the right track. But if I don't write it down, I'm kind of lost about it. Excellent question. Thank you for asking that one.